you have to keep the deer from knowing that you're hunting them. This is the last official episode of the 2019 Midwest Whitetail off-season series. And I wanted to come back to this spot that we had 2 episodes here earlier, establishing this poor man plot and then coming back and fertilizing and liming it. I wanted to show you the final update before we wrap this one up for the year. And then I also want to talk a little bit more about what I think is the most important tip or the cardinal rule of deer hunting. So we'll start out with this food plot. And I was really surprised when we drove up here on the four-wheeler how well the kill had taken place here. I know when I was here a couple weeks ago, there was a lot of green grass in here yet. It just shows that when the temperatures are a little bit cool like they have been this spring, that Roundup or the glyphosate just doesn't wipe out the grasses and the weeds quite as quickly as it does when it's a little bit cooler like this. But it did a good job. There's a few spots left that are green, but it won't be too hard to touch those up, you know, later with a little bit of herbicide if I choose. Taking a look, there is a lot of clover coming up in here. So the experiment looks like it's going to be a success of broadcasting clover seed into standing grass. That always was my most, I guess the thing I was most nervous about, whether it would work, was whether you could spread clover into something like this that was already established without burning it off and clearing all the residue. But as you start looking at this, there's a lot of clover down in there that's coming up through that grass. So, you know, it is something that, you know, if you don't have a lot of time and equipment, you can make this stuff work. Very simple steps. I didn't use any equipment on this job. Basically just a backpack sprayer and a hand spreader. So anyway, keep that in mind. It's one of the best things you can do to improve your hunting area, even if you're just hunting on permission. And it doesn't have to be a springtime project either, because we'll be coming back again during the summer planting big and beastie in a lot of these types of areas too. And that's a brassica blend that does really well from about the end of July right on through the hunting season, as far as, you know, growing fast, creating a lot of forage, and then attracting a lot of deer once you get into the season. We plant that in a lot of these little small poor man plots during the summer also. Now I want to talk about my #1 tip for deer hunting. And, you know, we talk around this subject almost every single day when we're out deer hunting during the season. It seems like we're always coming back to the same thing, and that is you have to keep the deer from knowing that you're hunting them, because they will move naturally if they don't feel the human pressure in the areas where they live. As soon as they figure out that somebody's there, that somebody's consistently or even occasionally coming and going, they change their habits. They go from being more daylight active to being more nocturnal. Sometimes they'll even move slightly within their range to a different part of their range. Typically they won't completely change their range. People think, oh, the deer just pick up and leave. They don't usually do that. Usually what they do is change their habits within that range, which has about the same effect if you're a bow hunter. They have to be moving during the day for you to have any success. So if they're not moving during the day, or they're not moving where you typically hunt, they might as well be 50 miles away. So let's talk about all the various ways that deer can figure out that we're hunting them. And this is where it gets interesting, because it's a simple statement: keep the deer from knowing that you're hunting them. That's easy to say, but it's a lot tougher to actually do that. And the biggest mistake I feel comes during the entry and exit to the stands. That's why we talk so much about that during the season. Every single stand, when you start watching the episodes in the fall, especially the daily video blogs, I'm constantly talking about how I get in and out. These are the strategies that I use to get to this stand without the deer knowing it. It's so critical, because I have a friend of mine that gave the analogy: if a person was trying to sneak into your house, sneak into your house and steal something, they wouldn't walk up to the front door beating a bass drum. You know, they'd sneak in. They wouldn't let you know that they were coming. And yet a lot of deer hunters make the mistake of beating that bass drum when they're walking into their tree stand. And they may not even do it on purpose. They may just say, well, this is the easiest route. This is the most, you know, whatever you want to say, the path of least resistance to get to this spot. but at the same time, they're educating a lot of deer. So touching on that a little bit more, I think the biggest mistake people make on their entry and exit is going to and from the tree stand without paying attention to the wind. Again, they may only have one way in, and when they get there, the spot may work really, really well for that wind of that day, but they might be going to it or from it on a crosswind. So now, like, we just came back here about maybe 300 yards on this four-wheeler, and this is a spot that I've hunted in the past. You know, there'll be a tree stand right back in here someplace, and I've got this poor man plot here. It's gonna be an awesome spot. So it wouldn't make any sense to walk in here the whole way with a crosswind, because now I've just eliminated basically half of the area where the deer could possibly come from, because they pick up, you know, my scent or our scent with a cameraman as well. You know, they say, okay, some person just went through there today. Whether they recognize this as a hunter or not doesn't really matter. They're not going to come over there later that afternoon, you know, to check it out. They're going to say, okay, that's a dangerous spot. I'm going to stay away from there today. Maybe I'll check it out later, you know, a couple days from now, whatever. You know, they're not going to come to that spot when they know you walked in there with the bass drum pounding. Same thing is, you know, obviously if you're walking through an area where they can see you. You know, a lot of people walk into the afternoon hunts going through the open timber. Well, they might have to walk past a couple bedding ridges, or even if they don't, even if they stay, you know, away from those spots and the timber is open, the deer can see them for at least 200 yards in every direction. So if the deer are paying attention, then they've just cleared out almost a quarter of a mile wide section of their hunting area going in there to hunt. And it is no wonder that when the deer get on their feet later that afternoon, that they're not going to come in your direction. Another one that I think people that don't pay enough attention to is the ground scent. And again, you can really be under control with your ground scent coming in. You know, you don't want to cross trails that the deer are going to be coming to you on, so you use ditches and you do all this stuff. But then at the end of legal shooting time, you walk straight back to your vehicle. And now the deer are crossing that after you've left. You think that's not a problem, but the deer know that that's not normal. Now they're hitting human scent in places, fresh human scent, in places where people aren't supposed to be. This is their, you know, their security area. This is where they feed, or this is where they, you know, spend a lot of time during the day. They don't want to be smelling people there. So you got to be really, really careful, not just with where you leave your ground scent going to your tree stands, but also where you leave your ground scent when you're going back to your vehicle. Both are super, super critical. And a lot of people, again, they make the mistake of thinking it doesn't matter what happens after they leave, that the hunt is already over with. That hunt is already over with, but the next one, you know, that they could potentially be in that same spot, you're creating this residual damage that builds up over the course of the season when the deer, you know, start picking up on human scent where it shouldn't be. That registers. If it happens consistently, they will start avoiding those areas. So again, everything you do, from scent control, you know, how you go to and from your tree stand, every step you take once you leave your vehicle until you get back into it has the potential to impact your chances for success. Everything you do can educate deer if you don't really manage every part of the hunt super carefully. So that's my number one tip. It's the cardinal rule of deer hunting. And I think it's going to be fairly obvious to a lot of people, but where it's not quite so obvious is how extreme you have to get. You know, it's not enough to say, well, I did this or I did that. You have to do every single thing correctly. Every decision that you make has an impact on your success. And if you do that over the course of your hunting career, you're going to be rewarded with a lot more success. You know, it's not going to be, you know, those go in, see a bunch of deer, kill one, you know, those hunts are always going to take place. It's that, you know, over the course of time, being able to keep your hunting area as fresh as possible for as long as possible. That's really the true definition of success. I appreciate you joining us for the 2019 Midwest Whitetail off-season series. We're going to take a couple of months off now, a little break during the summer, and we'll be back again with the in-season series starting towards the end of August. So keep checking back, and then we'll start picking up the weekly episodes again then. But during the meantime, we're going to be putting a lot of content in the daily video blogs. I mean, I haven't planted yet. I mean, it's been so wet, I haven't had the tractor out of the shed yet. So I've got a lot of work to do. We'll do some scouting during the summer, a lot of filming of velvet bucks. It won't just be myself, it'll be the rest of the team. We'll start dropping this content into those dailies starting up here pretty soon. So check on those, and hopefully we can keep you entertained with some whitetail action during the summer. Well, I appreciate you joining us. We'll see you right back here again in a couple of months for the next episode of Midwest Whitetail. And remember to always dream big.